So please continue to introduce yourself in the chat, where you're joining from, what your name is, your pronouns if you feel comfortable sharing, the organization that you're a part of, and what impact Dr. Mutulu Shakur's work has had on any of you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why we gather. So if someone could put the slides up, that'll be great. All right. Thank you, comrade. So we are the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement. And once again, tonight we are gathering to honor our beloved revolutionary ancestor and founding member of the African People's Organization and the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, Dr. Mutulu Shakur, on what would have been his 75th birthday. Shout out to the Leos. The name Shakur means grateful. And tonight we are so grateful for the power and the legacy of Dr. Mutulu Shakur. We will do our best to honor the fullness of who Mutulu was and continues to be for so many of us and our movements. Tonight, we will hear about Baba Mutulu's political organizing in the height of fascist repression. We'll start with a libation for our ancestors and share a little bit about who we are and why we commemorate 46 years of Black August resistance, and then get the commemoration started. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Baba Kwame to get us started with a wonderful opening libation.
The libation will do a little bit differently. The words of power will be stiff resistance as opposed to Aibobo or Ashe or any of the other African languages. We will do this in 8 layers of drink. The first drink is to ultimate reality, whom we call the high God of all community and life. The second drink is to all of the sheroes and heroes of Africa who built civilizations, both great, large, and small. Also who fought against the enslavement and colonization of their respective nations, as well as the Americas. The third layer of drink, we salute to the New African Independence Movement. We salute Elhaj Malik El-Shabazz, Malcolm X, and his partner, Dr. Betty Shabazz. Queen Mother Moore and her partner, Robert and Mabel Williams, Gaidi and Imari Obedelli and their partners, Herman and Eologa Ferguson. The fourth tier of this drink will be Nahanda Aibudu and her partner, Ahmed Obafemi and his partner, and Chokwe and Nubia Lumumba. The fifth layer of drink, we salute to our own family, our sheroes and heroes. The sixth layer of drink is to all political prisoners and prisoners of wars and exiles. The seventh layer is to our future descendants and the children, so that we can build a better future. The last layer, the eighth layer of drink, is to the family of Dr. Mutulu Shakur, Ruth Lloyd, Eddie Lloyd, Cherney Lloyd Sr., Cherney Lloyd Jr., Dolores Porter, Saladin Shakur, Lumumba Shakur, Sonny Carson, Zed Shakur, Wakil Shakur, Tahim Jabbar, Germanimo Diaga Prat, Asma, Fulani Sunni Ali, Afeni Shakur, Tupac Shakur, Yafeo Pula, Daruba Sunni Ali, Zenobia Amira Muhammad, Yakaziz Way, Taimba. Now that the whole family is here, we say, thank you, stiff resistance, and straight ahead. The libation is complete. Sante Sana.
All right, thank you so much for that, Baba Kwame. That was so beautiful, and I appreciate the rendition of this libation. And I'm going to pass it over to my comrade Taliba, who's representing the Republic of New Africa, all right, in the Atlanta territory, to talk about who Malcolm X Grassroots Movement is.
Awesome. So, hey, y'all. Hey, yes, I'm Taliba Bouye. I'm a proud member of the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement and and the New African People's Organization. I am coming here as that member. MXGM is an organization of Black and New Africans whose mission is to defend the human rights of our people and to promote self-determination in our communities. So we carry on this through 6 principles of unity. And you know, which when we think about Baba Mutulu, this is a part of his principles in his own self-determination. And so while we do understand that collective institutions of white supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism has been at the root of our people's oppression, we understand without community control and without power to determine our own lives, we will continue to fall victim to genocide. So thus we fight for power and community control. So with that, we do organize around 6 principles of unity. We defend the human rights of all African people. We demand reparations. We promote self-determination for this new African nation. We oppose genocide, both that of our ancestors' experience and the continuous genocidal conditions that our communities are placed in currently. We demand the release of all political prisoners, prisoners of war, and political exiles. And then on our 6th principle, we struggle to end the gender and sexual oppression faced by new Africans here. And so we have 8 chapters across this empire, from Oakland to Chicago to Detroit, Jackson, Atlanta, DC, Philadelphia, and New York. And we are always on the lookout for our Black people who love Black people, who are aligned with these principles of unity and believe in our right to self-determination, to land, and for independence. So if that is you, drop it in the chat. We'll follow up with you. If that's you, reach out and, connect with us. Free to land, y'all. Black August Resistance.
All right, thank you so much for that, comrade. And as they said, if you feel as though you are aligned with MXGM and who we are, drop your information to us in the chat so that we can get in touch with you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what is Black August, right? This has been 46 years now. This is my 4th year commemorating Black August. So again, this marks the 46th year of Black August resistance, and Black August is a month-long commemoration to honor the fallen freedom fighters of the Black liberation movement, to call for the release of political prisoners and prisoners of war, and to educate our people on the history of the continued resistance of Black, New African, and African peoples to oppression, colonization, and slavery in the U.S. and throughout the diaspora. After the assassination of Qatari Golden by medical neglect on August 1st, 1978, Black prisoners shaved their heads, wore Black armbands, and in unity with the Black Muslim prisoners during Ramadan fasted from sunrise to sunset. This set the path for the practice of fasting during Black August. To observe and commemorate Black August, everyone is encouraged to uphold the practices of study, fast, train, and fight. If you are not able to fast from sunrise to sunset for, like medical reasons, we encourage you to fast from something else like social media. Also, this is a period of abstaining from substances as well. Or you can fast from shopping, right? But something to show your commitment to commemorating the Black August resistance. And then the next slide, please. All right, so we're going to hear from Dr. Mutulu Shakur in his own words. We just wanted to remind folks of who Dr. Mutulu Shakur was. He came to be a new African revolutionary in his own words. This clip we will see is from a 1998 interview with Mutulu while he was being held at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary.
So, could you tell our audience a little bit about your history as a political activist, as a revolutionary? Just give us a brief overview of who you are and really why you're here in the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary.
That's a two-pronged question. Why am I here in Atlanta Federal Penitentiary is a long story about the treatment of political prisoners and prisoners of war within the context of U.S. prison system in particular. Who I am, I believe, reflects their attitude towards me. I think that I am considered a part of the New African Independence Movement. And that movement recruited me at the age of 15. I was involved with a man in the community called South Jamaica, Queens. And I think that anybody who know anything about New York knows that South Jamaica, Queens is considered a middle-class black neighborhood. And the most interesting thing about that neighborhood was that all of the people in the 60s, late 50s, who had responsibility for the broad community, for the extended family in our community, the teachers, the nurses, the principals, the cops even, the firemen, were all very race-conscious people. So we came from a community that had Sekou Dinga, who had Asada Shakur, who had Herman Ferguson. So we grew up in a very race-conscious time. And at the time that I was 13 or 14, I became a son of a man by Abdul Shakur, Saladin Abdul Shakur. And he was the father. Actually, I was 12. He was the father of Lumumba Shakur and Zaid Shakur. For those people who don't know who Lumumba Shakur is, the famous Panther 21 case was Lumumba Shakur et al., and that was my brother. And Zaid Shakur was the comrade who was killed when Asada Shakur was captured on the New Jersey Turnpike. Both of them were, their father took me in. I have no biological father. I mean, I must have a biological father, but I have no father in that respect. And I became a part of that family at the age of 11 and 12. And so we were all very conscious people. And Herman Ferguson was the principal of the school, which one of the important schools in the community that allowed for us to read and understand our history, understand community control. He was a very influential in the Southeast Queens Community Corporation, Jamaica Community Corporation. These are organizations that took care of the fundamental needs of the community. And so he took me in as my political father. So I had great mentors during my very, very early age. I didn't always do what they said, but I was always dependent on them for guidance, and I knew that when in doubt, they had the direction. And so at the age of 15, I went to the Corps under Sonny Carson when he was at the South, when they were in Ocean Hill, Brownsville, the School for Common Sense. So, and Sonny Carson was my street father. He was like someone who knew the streets and who was in Brooklyn. And so we always, had that kind of surrounding. So I was recruited essentially into the Black Liberation Movement through these men. And I believe that that's what put me in the position I am today. And that is that I feel good about myself. I feel that I have dedicated my life to a worthy cause. I think that there must be place in the world for dreamers, and I'm a dreamer. And I think that the dreamers are the people who put into the reality what we wish could happen, because they fight for it. And I think that the new African independence movement, through these men, has advanced and has stayed strong for a long period of time. And it's our time to take over. Now I'm almost 50, and so we'll look to the youth to take over from where we are. But
Great. Thank you so much for that wonderful clip, comrade. And we're just going to bring up the speakers for tonight's panel. We'll be joined by Dr. Akinyele Omoja, who those of us in MXGM affectionately know as Baba AK, as well as revolutionary freedom fighter Susan Rosenberg, and Dr. Kwame Kalamara, who we also know once again affectionately as Baba Kwame. Okay, so we want to, all right, you see y'all are being spotlit. Woohoo. Mm. Okay, cool. So we want to thank you all for joining us tonight to love up on our beloved ancestor, Dr. Mutulu Shakur. While many of us learn about his legacy by studying his work and his teachings, you all know and struggled alongside him personally. So for this conversation, we want to explicitly hone in on Baba Matulu's political organizing. And we are framing it, we're framing it as New Africa anti-fascism, right? His work against COINTEL Pro and his work to build solidarity across movements and struggles for self-determination. So I want to start with Baba AK and Susan. As co-editors of the Soul Journal on Dr. Mutulu Shakur, a beautiful collection of writings from and about Baba Mutulu's life and work. Talk to us about Dr. Mutulu's political organizing, specifically his anti-imperialism work.
First, Annahelle, I want to say to you, free the land and stiff and Black August resistance on this day that we're honoring our ancestor. In a way, it's kind of bittersweet to say that. One level, I feel it because I honor him. I've always honored him as a teacher and leader, and then on the other hand, as a comrade and brother. But I was trying to wrap my head around the new African fascism, anti-fascism, which he certainly was. Um, he defined himself as a revolutionary nationalist, anti-imperialist. There's a speech he gave. Susan was probably there on Chatepo Day because Susan was involved in New York and a lot of that organizing with him. And he says that throughout this speech. And when I look at Mutulu, particularly as we here for Black August, I see Mutulu as a part of a political lineage. I didn't know it as much until Susan and I worked on that project together. I didn't know that when Matulu was a 13-year-old, he went to go hear Malcolm. I was kind of jealous a little bit that he got to hear Malcolm at Temple Number 7 in Harlem. I know about his connection, as he mentioned in that clip, to Abba Shakur, to Herman Ferguson, who was connected to Malcolm, as well as to Sonny Carson. But I see Matulu is kind of linked all the way back to our ancestors who first fought when we got here. He's a part of that resistance. And the fact he's born during Black August, I think just enhances that. But so that first and foremost, because and Mutulu was about organizing resistance on a lot of different levels. We're talking about the COINTELPRO piece, but just if you have to look at it from this perspective, settler colonialism in the U.S. empire is a basis of fascism here. I mean, if you have to think that Hitler studied how they enslaved African people, right? Before they set up his system of fascism. In South Africa during apartheid, they studied, Jim Crow here. So if this is the basis of it, the heart of it, the foundation of it, not only here, but internationally, which is why Matulu said he was also an anti-imperialist. Um, and I want to just say a couple other things, and I turn the mic over to Susan. She was polite enough to let me start, but so Matulu was always a part of that organized resistance, whether it was fighting to get the release of political prisoners, first and foremost, to see how we can attack it on a legal level, but Mutulu was organizing people in the streets, and of course, the state accuses him of helping to get people, out other than legal means. And so, we won't confirm or deny that, or confirm or support that at this particular time, even though he says he was part of clandestine resistance. Okay, so Mutulu fought on all of those levels to challenge fascism on the levels he felt that we should be able to fight it on. Finally, I just want to say before I pass the mic to Susan. Well, no, I'll pass the mic right now. But yeah, he fought on all those levels. And wait, no, there's one other thing, and this is one of the things I've been trying to find as we go into Black August. One of the best moments I had working with Mutulu is when he was in Atlanta Federal Penitentiary during the time of that interview. I think it might have even been a little bit later. And I was able to go in as an educator into the institution. And we organized an event during Marcus Garvey's birthday, August 17th. The prison officials didn't want it to be a Black August, and they was watching to see if we were going to do it as a Black August program. And Mutulu did do a Black August poem dedicated. So he was very much of that Black August tradition, and saw it as something as valuable. So we continued it today in his honor. Ashe.
Well, thank you. Thank you, AK. I'm just like you, been thinking a lot about Mutulu. First, let me say thank you for inviting me to participate in this. I feel very honored. And just also want to say free the land, which I would say that Mutulu and a few other people in the anti-imperialist organizing that was going on in the 70s and 80s in New York was very much an anti-imperialist in an anti-imperialist framework. And Dr. Shakur, before a lot of other people, was talking about settler colonialism. I think, I met Dr. Shakur at Lincoln Hospital doing anti-drug work. And that's where I first met him, but also connected to that, I met him around political prisoner work, and particularly around Assata Shakur's one of her trials that was happening in 1973 in New York. And so I was able to learn from him for many years and talk with him and be in political dialogue with him, which actually probably was one of the most important things that ever has happened in my own political life. Because what Dr. Shakur, and I'm going to call him Mutulu for the purpose of tonight, really organized us, me, other people who were in the anti-imperialist left in New York to fight white supremacy, to recognize that the political repression that was going on at that time was, in addition to being rooted in capitalism and the oppression of people of color, was very much centered around white supremacy. And that for us, in an anti-imperialist context, we needed to really take on fighting white supremacy. And to that end, I think we also, and I would say I understood that to freeing the land, to framing Black liberation as a national liberation struggle of oppressed people who have a right to self-determination up to and including the right to use armed struggle and armed defense, to free a portion of the land was really critical to our own then understanding about how white supremacy was central to keeping that in place. And I think that is connected to also what Akanyele was saying about fascism. And so some of the conversations over many years were about settlerism, was about white supremacy, about the relationship between the United States and South Africa. I think we could say now it would be also very connected to what's going on in Palestine and with Palestine. Mutulu's influence and his politics were very much internationalist. And if we look at what he then ended up writing while he was on trial around trying to utilize international law as a framework, which he did along with Chokwe Lumumba and others in the new African independence movement, to utilize that framework to take American criminality, which is what the government was trying to say about all of us, out of that frame and put it into a struggle for freedom and national liberation and international law is absolutely internationalism at a very high level, fighting in the US court system, one arena of struggle, certainly not the only one. So there's a lot about Dr. Shakur and his political and ideological influence, as well as the fact that, as everybody who ever knew him on any level knows, that Mutulu was just loved the people. And that was really, I think, something that I understood from him in a very different way. So let me stop at that point and we'll go on from there.
Yes, thank you both so much for your responses. I feel like they're still very timely. And I think often about the tribute that the May 19th Communist Party wrote to Baba Mutulu, in the special edition commemorating him after he transitioned in the what was it, Rebuild Collective newspaper. And you all talk about how he was constantly challenging y'all on white supremacy, and racism, and how it showed up like in your organizing and even subconsciously. And I think that's something that we can still utilize today in the movement, especially as we're seeing a lot of divisive tactics from the state, but even from people who are not a part of like the liberation movement, specifically thinking about what's happening with our Black and Palestinian solidarity efforts, or even solidarity efforts with the folks in Puerto Rico. Right. So again, I just really appreciate you all lifting up Baba Mutulu's internationalism. And it's definitely something that I look to, and aspire to in my organizing work. So Susan, I'm going to ask you another question. We often, especially from Baba Watani, that Mutulu, we often hear especially from Baba Watani, that Mutulu built relationships and networks across racial lines, that he worked to be in solidarity across movements and to ensure there was solidarity for the new African independence movement. Can you share more about this?
Yes, I think I agree with Watani. The Mutulu was an internationalist. The first person I ever went to a meeting with Mutulu was with Yuri Kochiyama. And at her where she worked at a diner in Harlem. And it was to talk about, at that time, the Committee to Free Political Prisoners, the National Committee, which she was working in. And Mutulu was beginning to organize us, the white anti-imperialists who were part of then at that time Prairie Fire Organizing Committee, and then later May 19th, to really take up that work. And that was indicative of Mutulu. Mutulu was very much trying to build solidarity and unity and alliances, because we need all of those in order to fight the power. Then we needed it, and we certainly need it now. That's an example. I think Mutulu worked, and we talk about this in the journal, the Souls Journal, around Zimbabwe and around Southern Africa and South Africa and around Namibia, and very much organized to build material aid to support what was happening in Southern Africa. That's another very clear example. But I think Mutulu looked to other struggles always to see what could be learned, what unity could be built, what were the principles upon which that kind of unity could be determined. So there's many examples of that around Puerto Rican independence. Absolutely. Mutulu worked very much for that, and he organized us to support all of those struggles as well. I mean, we did, but it was really also in part with direction from him and others in the New African Independence Movement. Ahmed Obafemi was very prominent and important in that process of organizing as well. Um,
Can I add something to that, Angel?
Yep.
I think and also it can't be forgotten in terms of his political legacy that he worked to try to bring together forces within the Black liberation movement, New African independence movement. Even in that speech, I referenced earlier on Chetepo Day, he represented not only um, the National Task Force for COINTEL Pro Litigation and Research. He talked about the African People's Party, the Republic of New Africa. He talked about the members of the Black Panther Party who were there. Again, revolutionary nationalists he was trying to bring together on one level. He was always pushing for consolidation, which is what led to the formation of New African People's Organization. But then he was also having relationships with Black people who did not have our ideology in the broader Black nationalist community, even amongst some liberals. And here you might even remember when he was released, he really gave big ups to the squad, in terms of the role that they played in his release. So Mutulu would talk to a whole lot of folks and deal with a whole lot of folks and try to forward an agenda for our liberation. He wasn't sectarian.
He was anti-sectarian.
Yes, thank you both for sharing that. Yeah, once again, just like so interesting how this wisdom is still applicable to what's going on today. And I think we need it more now than ever, especially against the repressive forces that we're up against. So I'm going to bring on Baba Kwame. Are you there, Baba? Ah, there you are.
So those are continua.
All right, free the land, Baba Kwame.
Yeah.
So I want to bring you into this conversation. The title for the discussion is New African Anti-Fascism, the political organizing of Dr. Mutulu Shakur. And we are coining the term New African Anti-Fascism because we believe George Jackson was right. In the late 60s, early 70s, Black people lived in a fascist state. Hoover built the biggest counterinsurgency program to date, which is COINTEL Pro. And our revolutionary leaders were being hunted down, gunned down, disappeared, arrested, and tortured. Can you talk about the conditions in this time and the work of the National Task Force for COINTEL Pro litigation and research? And this was work you did with Mutulu, no?
Let's see. Let me begin by saying that I think it's important for us to some degree, try to define fascism. Fascism has been characterized as a one-party dictatorship with extreme nationalism, suppression of any type of opposition. However, but I do think that George Jackson is correct if we understand that although that technical definition very well might not fit, elements of it is still present depending upon how you characterize it. We know that we have two primary parties in the U.S. empire, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party. And as of late, you hear people saying, well, both parties aren't the same. What we can say is that both parties agree on imperialism, on capitalism, monopoly capitalism, patriarchy, and the oppression of Black and brown and other peoples of the world. We can see right now, given the Trump administration, that the Supreme Court is really trying to make certain that authoritarian rule is highlighted. We're going to see a lot more, but I think the thing that we need to go back to in terms of your initial question is that we're looking at what the late 1960s and early 1970s, and that was a time where the Black Power movement and the New African Independence movement was beginning to get its wings. We saw J. Edgar Hoover with the COINTEL program, which was mentioned earlier. We saw the repression where people were being shot, killed. People were being arrested and put in jail. They were subjected to all sorts of psychological torture. And this torture was ultimately meant to break the spirit of those people who considered themselves to be revolutionary and wanted to see freedom for not only Black and brown and other oppressed people, but to see self-determination for the Black nation here in North America. You asked about the setting. Well, all I can tell you is my experience is we're seeing communities that were impoverished, people who were being subjected to drugs, and I'm from San Francisco, and what I can say is that in the late 1960s, whenever there was rebellion where people rebelled against the conditions, at that time there was Mayor Joseph Alioco. Within 30 days, heroin was on the streets, and so you saw all this type of stuff going on around that period. You saw National Guard, you saw police, you saw police. You heard driving by Black. All that was very evident in terms of that particular period, and so therefore, in the late 1960s, you saw various organizations who said let's pull this together. In the late 1960s, you had organizations like the National Conference of Black Lawyers come into being. You had the National Conference of Black Mayors, National Black Social Workers. You had the Association of Black Psychologists. All I'm saying is that this was a period where Black folks were saying enough is enough, and we needed to address that as possible. Now, I think Bob Akinyele had mentioned the National Task Force for COINTEL Pro Litigation and Research. Well, this came out of those experiences to be able to find out what were some of the tools and strategies and techniques can we use to fight this repression. Well, in 1971, 1972, 1973, I was a student at the San Francisco State University, where Nathan Heller was one of the directors of the Black Studies program there. At that point, I met Coltrane Shimarenga. He was the person who first introduced me to the task force, not Mutulu. I didn't meet Mutulu until perhaps maybe 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years after that. It was Randolph Sims. That was the name that he used, the government, when he was beginning to assist Afeni Shakur and Mutulu in terms of putting together the National Task Force for COINTEL Pro Litigation Research. And actually, it was Afeni who I met in the mid-1970s. And that time, both Coltrane Shimarenga and Afeni were working out of Congressman Ron Dellum's office. And Dellum's office gave cover and currency to the formation of the National Task Force for COINTEL Pro Litigation Research. My job, my assignment was to recruit lawyers and law students to be able to do the necessary research. We knew that, for example, and this was evidenced in I believe the Church Commission's report in, I think, 1975, where it talked about the abuses of the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, and the IRS. All these were various agencies that were used to cripple any kind of progressive and revolutionary movement. In any event, at that time, Fanny was actually living on McAllister Street, right across the street from the Third Baptist Church, which was one of the major churches of resistance in the Black community in San Francisco. And admittedly, to my credit, much years later, and if you go ahead and put in National Task Force for COINTEL Litigation Research, you'll see, I believe, at least one document, and it lists Randolph Sims as the executive director, both Mutulu and Afeni as national coordinators, mentions Lou Myers, Jeff Haas out of Chicago, Lou Bell, Susan Tippergraph, Cheyenne Bell. Gotta say, Cheyenne Bell was one of my recruits. She was a student at Hastings School of Law, and she stuck with it. It mentions Lennox Hines, Nathan Hare, and Noam Chomsky and Florence Kennedy. All I'm really trying to say is that this was the strength that was created after some years. In fact, one of the things besides recruiting lawyers, before I even met Mutulu, if I would go to New Orleans for a conference and he was supposed to speak, well, he didn't show up. And so he would call me and say, well, brother, I need you to fill in. And so in many respects, even before I met him, he was making certain that I was filling in for him all the time in any of these various venues. And so one of the strategies I think is important to say, besides using this information that, in terms of Giacomo Giaga's case and any of these number of cases, one of the strategies that was also utilized by the task force, and that was to say, everybody get your file through the Freedom of Information Act. Everybody gets your file. And one of the things that getting files together, my file might have some stuff that's blacked out. But if you got your file, that section that was blotted out on mine might be not blotted out on yours, and we can begin to look and see exactly what the strategies and tactics were of these various police organizations. That was something that too often wasn't recognized as a strategy. I know during around Assata's liberation, you couldn't get anything. The police made certain that you, if you asked for a file and they would direct you to this field office or that field office, you couldn't get that. But eventually I met Mutulu in the late 1970s in New York to be able to watch him with the Banner organization, the Acupuncturist Association, as well as his other organizing. All I can say is if I'm answering your question, he was a great organizer, but he understood the politics of American imperialism very well, very well. He was able to, with his charisma and his intellect, to be able to get allies from from everywhere. I met Serge Makinde from the Congolese movement through Mutulu and Ahmed and that whole New York crew. And so I think what I want to do is say this. When we're looking at the issue of counterinsurgency, counterinsurgency is not a recent development. What I'm really saying is not a 1970s, 80s, or 60s development. We can take that going all the way back to the enslavement of African people, where warfare was initiated against African nations. And so if we can see that historical linear connection, I think it will enable us to really develop the psychological tools and other tools necessary to defeat white supremacy, all of the other oppressions, and also what often is not addressed is we have to defeat all forms of patriarchy, because all of our people need to be vested in being able to liberate this planet from all oppressions and exploitations. I'm going to close there, and I'm hoping that answered your question. I might have went off a little bit, but I'm hoping that it filled in some blanks.
Oh, yes, definitely did. Thank you so much for that, Baba. And I think this is a great segue into bringing everyone on the screen to ask two questions that I have for all three of y'all. So one is, as you mentioned, Mutulu was national coordinator with Mutulu Shakur. Talk to us about this work, the work to expose the impact of COINTEL Pro, and wage campaigns to free political prisoners, why it was so important.
I know at that time, and one of the main, well, let me go back. Let me go back a second. As I believe Susan mentioned, the task force actually grew out of, and I didn't know it, understand it as it was happening, but from us going back and doing the research. But Susan mentioned Matulu's working with Yuri, and we should also mention Baba Bilal, Sunni Ali, and others in the National Committee to Defend uh, Political Prisoners. And that started when the leadership, national leadership of the Black Panther Party did not adequately provide support for the New York Panther 21, including Afeni and a lot of folks that Mutulu grew up with. And then out of that, they saw they needed a more advanced network. And part of the things that inspired that was Mutulu was assigned after Geronimo Gijaga, also known as Geronimo Pratt, his captivity. Again, the national leadership of Black Panther Party, and I ain't trying to be sectarian, but it's just history, failed to support Geronimo at that time. So Mutulu, I think he says, was assigned by Zaid Shakur to go check on Geronimo, because Geronimo was a revered hero in the movement. We don't like to say somebody bigger than others, but he been putting in the work. And so Mutulu went on that. And so one of the main things with the task force I know was working around um, getting Geronimo out, getting up, other political prisoners. They were actually, and I remember when um, Afeni and Matulu would come to LA. We would be in Watani's dining room, and they would show this information is out there. There should be proof that he was where he said he was, to verify his alibi, and he should have been out of prison. At that time, he was mostly in segregation, and so they were actually finding these documents from what was released when again radical forces, some radical white folks went raided the draft office and found these COINTELPRO documents. And I know some of the comrades in Mutulu were working with, I don't know if Susan was a part of that at the time, but they had formed their own COINTELPRO work that was happening there. And so off of those those resources, Mutulu and Afeni, I should give Afeni is certainly important in that at that time, being a spokesperson for that effort. They educated the rest of us because we always knew something was wrong, but then they had the smoking gun, and so
Mhm.
and they educated the rest of the folks in the movement coming because they didn't live in California. They came out to California to meet with us out there, and that's what really got us going to working around Geronimo at that time. So I'll stop from there.
I mean, the only thing that I would add, which I think is connected to this, is that by exposing COINTELPRO, which the task force saw as its mission, it really it impacted the entire movement because it was really trying to say to the movement, there is a state program that is trying to destroy us. We need to understand the role of the state, the role of the police forces, and actually who's doing it and how they are doing it. And so I mean, Geronimo's case, he had been 7 years in the hole, for being having been set up. And the documents really did show that. And it meant that we could utilize that to free him eventually. It took quite a long time. But that connected to that is that the building of networks that could be networks of resistance is really, I think, part of what the National Task Force was trying to do, was to really expose the role of what this war
I think
being
there's some
waged.
problems with the connection.
My connection?
I can,
Hello? You can hear me?
I can hear
yes.
you now.
I'll stop. Anyway, I think that the idea that COINTEL Pro and the history and the actual war that was going on, we could then understand. And as you said, Kwame, that the linking, literally studying the documents allowed us to know much more about how we were being surveilled, what they were looking for, who they were looking for. So it really was very important in fighting against the state, which is not something that we talk about in those terms so much at this point. But then it was the most central thing, was understanding power and understanding the relationships that existed by the state apparatus itself.
Yes, yeah, wow. This is so interesting because, like, I always think how we weren't supposed to know about COINTELPRO originally, because the folks who went into the building, they were actually going to destroy draft papers, for the Vietnam War and stumbled upon the documents for what we now know as COINTELPRO. So the fact that it had been going on for so many years, just speaks to like the psychological terrorism of the state and just how sophisticated they are, in their repression tactics, which I think requires a multi-pronged, response, revolutionary response from those of us organizing. And then another question I want to ask you all is, what lessons should we gather and take with us from Dr. Mutulu Shakur's political organizing?
The struggle continues.
Really,
And the tactics are perhaps have evolved, but they're still part of the same foundation. So we need to go ahead and just demystify the language that is used out there to obscure what's really going on. So that's my take on it.
I think this to be it. Go ahead, Susan.
just I when it came out, I guess last week or maybe it was 10 days ago, that in Gaza, the Israeli government or I'm not sure who was putting OxyContin into the flour that was being distributed to at these so-called fake food, food sites, distribution sites. Um, I really thought about all of the work around anti-drug work in the 70s, and I thought a lot about Dr. Shakur. And one of the things that I think is related to this is that use of that drug in that situation is a direct effort to destroy civil society. And that's what was going on here, was to destroy the Black movement for people to this day. And so there are multiple ways to understand what Matulu's position and the movement and what the work was at that time, and how it is directly can help us understand what's happening today.
And another word we haven't mentioned today is genocide.
Right.
And so, when we think about the work of that was done at Lincoln Detox, and that's actually how I met Mutulu too. Not being in New York, but he and Faney came to Los Angeles, I think it's in 1973, to set up a similar program in Los Angeles. We couldn't get the support for it there through the church that was supporting some of the work that Mutulu was engaged in New York. But even with that work, the work he's engaged in with the church, United Church of Christ Commission on Racial Justice, he was able to get resources to go help the community in Wilmington, North Carolina, when they were under assault by a white terrorist organization. Then um, uh, he and other members of the Republic of New Africa in New York, Sister Ibadun Sundiata, Baba Chewy Ferguson, they go to Cairo, Illinois to provide training to people, military training, self-defense training, provide food supplies, because these communities were actually surrounded by white supremacist forces during that time. So they, Matulu described it, they had to shoot their way in. Um, uh, he was on that level. That same weekend, I met him when they doing Lincoln Detox. He came to our center in South Central LA, and he's showing us self-defense tactics. The brother was cold-blooded as a street fighter, you know what I mean? So Mutulu was combating genocide and fascism, white supremacy, settler colonialism through whatever means he had available. He was multi-talented and was willing to give his life for our people, you know. So the love that he talks about, it was real. You saw it if you met him, you spent any time with him. And finally, just when the years, I got to see him at two different institutions interacting with people. Actually, I visited him at a third institution, but I didn't get to work with him like we did in Atlanta and when he was in Coleman, Florida. But just see the respect that other folks had for him. And it just wasn't because of his relationship with Pop. Be quite clear. They looked at him, called him Baba Shakur. I looked at him as a teacher, and he was able, again, same type of thing. It wasn't the level of violence between folks in captivity went down wherever Mutulu went. He was able to bring folks together. So that's one way we fight fascism, right? We got to bring folks together on a basis that we commonly resist, and we build community and we build love and respect amongst each other on a basic level, even beyond some of our ideologies, that we begin to bring folks together. So let me shut up.
Yeah, let me add something if you don't mind. This is something that Baba Akinyele would always share. He would say that Mutulu was a great teacher. He was teaching Black Panthers, even though he was part of the original government Republic of North Africa. And that reminds me of Malcolm's quote, of all of our studies history that's best qualified to reward our research, which means we got to do a better job of teaching the community, but also teach our families. And so that's one of the things that Mutulu and Ahmed did for me. I mean, they introduced me to the Puerto Rican independence movement, and the Puerto Ricans talk to their families. I'm talking about their families in terms of the education. That's something that, for the most part, we tended not to do, to educate our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, our cousins. And if we want to create critical mass, that's something that we're going to have to do. And so I would say that we have to learn to be better teachers and find the kinds of creative ways to be able to spread the information that's necessary, given where we are at this digital age with AI and all this other stuff. And we need to be multi-generational as well as inclusive in terms of all genders, because we have to defeat the empire. And I should say, not just the U.S. empire, but empire no matter where it exists on the planet.
Oh, can I tell a story of that?
You're the greatest storyteller as far as I'm concerned, but go ahead.
Oh, that's a compliment, Baba. But I remember one time, this is a real story, when I was in New York, and it was when um you know, there was a lot of repression, particularly, after the Rockland County stuff, and a lot of the comrades were being pulled in, and but not only the New African movement, but the Puerto Rican movement in New York were having difficulty getting Black people and Puerto Rican people to the demonstrations. And I remember I was in a meeting with Jose Lopez from Chicago, Puerto Rican independence leader, and he was telling, we would meet, and we would critique each other, be some honesty and stuff. And he told the comrades, Puerto Rican and the black comrades in New York, he said, "Wait a minute, don't y'all have family members?" He said, "If my people don't come to the demonstration, they don't eat." So that might be cold, but that's that he was holding his folks accountable for the liberation of our people. So it sounds cold-blooded, but you know that's Jose was on that, and they did have in Chicago, Baba Kwame, you can certainly be a witness. At that particular time, they had a very strong mass base for the independence movement. They had a lot of strong institutions. And so, we need to look at all of these experiences as we rebuild our liberation movement. And, certainly the Tangerine terrorists is giving us a lot of motivation to reorganize.
Let me just say this, it might be off, but it's not off. But at this age, we have to fact check everything too. There's too much misinformation out there, and we have to fact check it.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you all shared, especially around the fact-checking piece too, with AI and everything like that. It's gotten me a couple of times, I will admit. I grew up in the digital age, so. Um, but we do have a few questions from the chat, so I'm gonna see if we can, yeah, we have time to answer them. So first up is from Kia Gregory. They said that I'm curious about the personal side of Dr. Mutulu and his nature, personality, hobbies, and interests, such as music, things he liked to do for fun. Could y'all speak to that?
Mm,
Sorry. Man, if I had $1 for every time I've been told that in the last 5 years. But he loved music, and like I said, I was looking for that poetry. He loved to write. Now, but the thing when I think about Matulu's personality, ooh, the thing that I remember the most, it brings most joy to me, is when I visited him in prison, and that brother would have me laughing. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't arrest me because he had me laughing so hard in the visiting area, particularly at Vacaville in California, just telling funny stories about people. Matulu was very humorous, and so he would think of also coin phrases that were very unique and stick with him. How you doing today, Mutulu? I'm juggling and struggling. It was certain phrases that are Mutuluisms. So, but that to me, that's one of the things that stick with me is his humor. Just how he talked about life. And sometimes things would even be some of those things that you'd have to laugh to keep from crying. I ain't gonna lie about that either. But he definitely had a funny sense of humor.
I would say,
Go ahead.
I would say I was thinking of all of the, Mutuluisms,
Uh-huh.
right? But Paul says try them all. Um, that was one. But I think that his healing, his desire for freedom, his push. I don't think he ever took a breath that there wasn't that in him.
Mm.
And I think he was like a lit fire, and you could feel it and you could see it. You could see it in his eyes, and you could feel how he loved people, how he healed people, how he challenged people, how he interacted with people. I mean, and I say all of those things about me personally, that our exchanges were filled with that for many, many, many years. But with him, with everyone. And I will just, if I could tell one very short story. I went to see Dr. Shakur at Lexington, very near, prior to his release. I went with Watani. The two of us went to see him. And he was very, 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 very ill at that point and so sick. And it took an hour for them to bring him into the visiting room. And he was wrapped in a blanket and he was very thin and he was chained up all, from his feet. And you could see where the chains had worn away the flesh on his ankles. It was really very, very extreme and very difficult. And while we were there, these folks came into the visiting room, and there was a whole secret eye contact that went on between him and the other people who were in the visiting room. And he told us that those folks sitting in the room were on his unit, and that he had organized a storytelling that happened every few days with all of the men on that unit to talk stories about their lives and about his life. And so, even in that moment where he was so very, very sick, he was organizing people and he was sharing his humanity and love with people, and they were sharing it back with him. And you could feel that even while there we were at this horrible visiting room. And so I think that's personally sort of, I have that with me forever.
I'd like to say that one of the things I think is important to acknowledge too, and I think your sharing, Susan, sort of brings it up and makes it even more impactful. He could have rested and perhaps had a few more days, few more weeks of living, but sharing the message and educating our people and sharing his love was important to where he just kept going on and kept going on, kept going on, kept going on. And I think that's important to also acknowledge.
Oh, yes. Thank you all for these wonderful stories and sharing the side about Matulu. I just think I need to deal with the reality that there's not a Black August where I won't be crying. But we have another question from Comrade Ace of the DC chapter, and Ace is asking, what can we learn from Matulu's political work about the necessity of consolidation of forces? How can we struggle across ideological lines to build a united anti-imperialist front in our movement today, and using the lessons from Matulu's organizing efforts?
He will, again, as we've been saying, he's willing to speak to anybody, you know, and he's speaking to not just intellectuals, he's speaking to street peoples, you know, um, street brothers and ancestors. Um, he's dealing with people of variety of sexualities, variety of ethnicities, but he's always clear. He was a new African nationalist, right? So um, he, that's who Mutulu was. And again, he was even within our movement. I'm talking about the New African Independence movement. He was challenging us to consolidate, to join ranks, to make ourselves stronger. But I know he had an emphasis, and Tanya always emphasizes that, they were brothers. But he was saying it's important to pull the foot soldiers together because a lot of times we had a lot of leaders, some amongst the leadership, and we were younger than a lot of people. I won't call no names, but he felt it was important for the foot soldiers to get together, people who were doing the work, doing the sacrificing, and things of that nature. So I think he had different tiers of unity as well. So we want to keep that in mind. Different levels of trust, because you got to have your core, because sometimes those opportunist forces can take advantage of us as well when we enter into relationship with them. I'll just put it that way.
I mean, I would say I can't really answer that question very well, but one thing that occurs to me is that he, like many people in prison who who experience prison in under these very extreme politicized, weaponized conditions, um, talk about unity, but I think it's unity based on principles. It's not just unity for unity, but I think not but, and he came out talking about that as well. But again, I think, it's unity based on a consolidation of a certain worldview that then allows you to go, but building the unity is really important. I think you talked about at the beginning a united front, a united front against fascism. And I think it's, we need it.
Now more than ever, probably.
Great, thank you all. And okay, we got one last question. I'm going to squeeze into, so sorry, Comrade Fernandez, if you're listening and watching. But we have a question from Charmaine Johnson asking, what is his legacy?
I see somebody asked about him as a life as a new African Muslim. I'd just be real quick on that. He was a Muslim. Um, and at the same time, one of the things I learned from Mutulu when he was incarcerated, he was cool with the Christians. He was cool with the Rastafarians. Um, he was cool with people doing traditional African religion, and he was at home worshiping with them in a lot of different spaces. He was cool with the, brothers in there in the pen who were Marxists, and so again, that was one of the ways him showing respect for diversity that he was able to bring folks together. But he's a Muslim, and yeah. So that was, and what was the question? Other question again?
What was it? This is a new. Oh, what role did spirituality serve in his day-to-day life and organizing?
I don't think he would have been able to endure what he endured without his spiritual life. And his spiritual life, I think we can't just hold to a religion as well. I remember, and hell, you might have been there when he went on Zoom with us after he was released at one of our MXGM gatherings. And he said, I was always praying that the new Africans were going to come and get me. You know what I mean? Y'all finally came and got me. He said it in his own humorous way, but Mutulu was somebody who had a strong spiritual belief, and his part of his spiritual belief is what we're here for today, Black August. Not just Black August in terms of the monthly or the annual thing, but what Black August represents in terms of our spirit of resistance. I think Mutulu felt tied to all of our ancestors who fought for our liberation. And, he honored those names. He honored the Harriet Tubman, the Queen Mother Moores, um, the comrades that he knew who died in battle, like Twyman Myers, Malcolm, all these folks, Imtahari Shabaka Sundiata, Kwesi Balagoon. I know even when Mutulu was in clandestinity, he would, pay tribute in some written form for some of these comrades who went over into the land of the ancestors. So he um he was spiritual I think it motivated him. He was definitely a spiritual person. I know in some of the Islamic ways too, if he might hear a certain curse word, Mutulu curse, but certain curse words he would say, I think astaghfirullah or whatever in Islam. Do you know, Susan? What was something he would say if you said something that he said, no, you can't. I curse, but we ain't going that far. So Matulu was definitely a spiritual person. And like Susan, it's hard for me just to constantly refer to him as Dr. Shakur. So but he wasn't like that. I'm Dr. Shakur. You know what I mean? That wasn't him. Uh, He's a people's person.
Well, thank you for that, Baba AK. And to close out, could you all share what's his legacy to y'all?
Man, I think we've been saying it,
Yeah.
stiff resistance, straight ahead, actually showing that love for the people and willingness to use your talents uh, for the liberation of our folks
I think
and
also,
humanity and humanity.
yeah, but also he saw the big picture. He had a framework, an analysis that guided his life, along with everything that everybody is saying. And I think uh, liberation in our lifetime is, kind of his legacy is keep, let's just keep struggling and let's defeat the empire. Absolutely, I think his legacy, I hope his legacy can become more massified,
Mhm, mhm.
more understood. I think having an archive for him, but more his being alive and organizing,
Mhm,
I
mhm.
would add that a real truth and reconciliation, if that ever happened, we might not be where we are right now.
And I know Baba Kwame, you and I, they probably should ask Susan as well, but the National Council Conference of Black Lawyers, they're meeting here in Atlanta in November,
November, right?
and there's going to be a session on, in honor of the task force. And
really.
mhm. Yeah, so I'll have
Yeah.
them reach out to you about it. But yeah, Baba Bilal Sunni Ali, the last time I saw him, as I was leaving the room, I said, Baba, you got any marching orders? And he said, we got to rebuild a national task force for COINTEL Pro litigation research. So it might look different today,
Mhm.
but it's probably a new name or whatever. But we got to be able to fight repression on a variety of levels.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think that's a great way to close out this discussion. Thank you all so much once again for joining us this evening on this special New African holiday, Mutulu Day, to commemorate and celebrate Baba Mutulu Shakur and his life and his legacy and his contributions to not just the New African Independence Movement, but really humanity at large. It's been really beautiful. I'm always excited to be in conversation with the elders. So this was the highlight of my week as well. And with that, I am going to bring up Comrade Io from the New York chapter. Once again, it is an honor to hear these reflections and stories. And we have to archive the history, right? So archivists, this is our charge, right? To get together and get these archives popping, especially with the threat of AI. So yeah, thank you again to the loved ones, to the comrades, to the friends in the audience who joined us. And yeah, we're going to bring up Io to sing a beautiful new African rendition of Happy Birthday to Baba Mutulu Shakur, and we ask that you all join us.
Thank you for allowing me to be present with Susan and Baba Akinyele.
No, Santi, thanks for organizing it. And I just want to say, Susan and I got the archiving stuff started with the journal. So,
Yes, thank you so much. And again, I'm so happy to be here and just keeping Matulu going alive in my being and in the relationship to this struggle. So thank you.
I say,
Oh, Shay. Oh, okay. So I'm being told, I'm being asked, Baba Aker, Baba Kwame, could one of you all sing Happy Birthday?
oh, I started off, I'm not a singer. I'm not a singer. I sing in the shower and I sing when I do my water aerobics class. But we say for
You qualify.
Kuzaliwa to you. We love you so much. We love you, we do. Faraha Kuzaliwa to you. We love you so much. We love you, we do. Faraha Kuzaliwa from the nation to you. All the ancestors send their blessing to you. The seasons are changing for you and for me as we struggle to be new African free. Faraha Kuzaliwa to you. We love you so much. We love you, we do. Faraha Kuzaliwa, Faraha Faraha Kuzaliwa, Faraha Matulu, Faraha Kuzaliwa, Faraha Matulu. Free the land.
By any means necessary.
By any means necessary. Thank you, Baba. Okay.
And I damn sure owe me now. I was not prepared for that. I would have been practicing.
You did great. She'd be really proud of you. All right. I'm going to pass it to Comrade Taliba to close us out.
All right, awesome. Free to land, y'all.
Free the
This is
land.
beautiful. Thank you, Baba, for that. I was like, come on and sing. I know I'll be looking forward to mine every year. This has been a beautiful evening, you all. I do not know Black August without knowing August 8th, which is for Baba Mutulu Shakur. While we continuously fought and demanded his freedom, we had concerts for Baba Mutulu. We did the freedom campaigns, of course, and we did awareness and we fundraised and we made sure that we knew that Baba is known about, that he is loved and we are still here for him. And so I'm simply here to put that call out, as my comrade was saying, this charge, right, that we have, and it's to continue. And so we know that when we fight, we win. Baba transitioned free. Like we did that. I remember him saying he knew that we were coming for him. He didn't know it was going to take that long, but he knew that we were coming and he did not, he never questioned that part. And so we know that they are still there. There are still those behind the wall. And so when we say what's the call, it is to free them all. When we say that fighting is a part of Black August resistance, we mean the charge to bring our people home, to study, to get a read of these times that we're in, to make sure that we are strong for when the resistance come, repression may be there as well. And it is our duty to free our people. So this is an invite for you to organize with campaigns to free Kamal Siddiqui, to free Imam Jamil Al-Amin, to bring Mumia home, and to free Shaka Shakur. Join these freedom campaigns. Make the demands to free our comrades, our elders. Make that a part of your movement work. If you are ending mass incarceration, if you're a part of reproductive justice, land work, health and healing, as Baba was a part of, you know that this is your work also to free our people, to fight and suppression the local, state, and federal prison systems, to release our political prisoners. They do exist in the United States. We have Reverend Jeral Powell. We have Josh Williams, right, from the Ferguson uprisings. That's just 10 years old. And we have current Stop Cop City. There's 61 here in Atlanta, and we know that more cop cities and these grounds are being built. St. Louis just put downstairs. So we have to show that we do not forget our community when they're behind the wall. That is the traditional Black August resistance, that we stand with those struggles and we say we have not forgotten you. So we know that these struggles and movements grow and they escalate, that the state will continue to create more political prisoners. We are actively witnessing the criminalization, the abuse, and the capture of young people during organizers during these rebellions. So these are two you see here with Reverend Jeral Powell. We have them with Josh Williams and Stop Cop City. And so we must free our revolutionary elders. We must free our comrades captured by the state, and we must mean it when we say free them all, right? That we're bringing them home. So as you again continue, I am Southern, y'all. So the doors of the movement is open. There is a role for all of us, and your fight can look like you're going to commit to posting, right? You're going to commit to writing. Not to tell my age, but I was 3 years old when Baba got captured, and I met him as a college student, one of Baba AK's college students in Coleman, and he wrote me and he would write back and it became personal. So I think there's something there to just reminding our people that we see you, we know that you are there. So plug into a campaign, make your Baba say cool last Black August, like, yo, we need a Black August 365. And so what would that look like if we just picked up one practice and we continued it out? So then I would also just want to re-invite you out to next Friday. This is our second Black August Resistance Friday. Next Friday, same time, we are going to examine Walter Rodney's 1971 essay, George Jackson, Black Revolutionary, with author and activist Dr. Sharice Burton Stelly, organizer and director of Community Resource Hub, Hiram Rivera, and author and organizer D. Musa Springer with the Walter Rodney Foundation. Y'all, this is really, really gonna be incredible because not only do we fight, we study, and this is just a piece that you all can get into. I hope you are checking out the handbook for Black Artist Resistance this year. The comrades been dropping them down in the chat. And yeah, every Friday, get your study, build in this community, and then share one thing out when you are out in these streets. I would be remiss. Another call that we were shared with is that we have a former political prisoner, Darubu, who was trying to make it home from the continent of Africa, New Jersey, for some treatments. And we are asking and putting the call out that if you have anything to give, that you can donate to his Cash App and that you can bring him so that he may return home and that he may be able to get the treatment that he needs. And so I believe it's going to be dropped soon. Al, if you're looking for it, I know it's dropped very early on in the event at the top. But, yeah, just give what you can. If you can't give, share it on your social media, share it in your network. And I know that the goal is trying to get $1,300. And so, yeah, many hands make the light work. And with that, I believe I am throwing it back to the host. Yeah, my host, Angel. Thank y'all so much. Black August Resistance, y'all.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Taliba. And yes, please get involved in the calls to actions. We are not just commemorating Black August for the sake of commemorating. We are also being active, and encouraging folks to organize, right, and join political prisoner campaigns, because it's very important to raise the awareness as well as educating people about our political prisoners. As Assata Shakur has taught us, no liberation struggle has gained their independence without freeing their political prisoners. So thank you all once again for joining us this evening. If you are in the East Coast, the South, and some parts of the Midwest, I hope that you're able to break fast sooner than later. And my folks from the West Coast, stay strong. Y'all got this. It's almost time for y'all to break fast soon. So yeah, thank you. Stiff resistance, straight ahead, like Mutulu said. Free the land. Have a good evening, and everyone be easy. Thank you.